Hey Mustangs, in this video we're going to be taking a look at viruses. So first thing, what is a virus? A virus is a non-living particle. So viruses don't meet the criteria to be considered a living thing. So we consider viruses a non-living particle. We're going to take a closer look at that in a couple more slides here. Viruses are only made out of two main things. So when we look at a virus has a protein coat on the outside that we call a capsid. As part of this protein coat, one of the most important parts actually of this protein coat is actually its protein receptors. Okay, so here we have the first part, the protein coat called the capsid, which includes the protein receptors. And then on the inside, it has either DNA or RNA, never both. Okay? So those are the two parts of a virus. That is all a virus is. As deadly as these things are, that's how simple they are. Two parts, protein coat on the outside, DNA or RNA on the inside. Now viruses are actually really small too. So if you thought bacteria were small, viruses are even smaller. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. So taking a look at the Cells Alive page, they have this really cool animation here. So we're going to zoom in. This is a person holding a nail. We're going to zoom into the head of the nail to see how big viruses actually are. So as we zoom in here, what we see here, here's the head of the nail. This gray strand is one single human hair. So one single human hair is what we're looking at here. These are dust mites. And then what you see right here are microscopic objects. These things here are only visible using a microscope. So let's go ahead and zoom in on those. So as we zoom in, we see this big yellow thing. This is pollen. Here is a white blood cell. Here's a red blood cell. Here's yeast. We zoom in a little closer. We can actually see how big bacteria are compared to our cells. So these would be like our cells right here. White blood cell, red blood cell. Here's a bacillus-shaped bacteria. Here's a coccus-shaped bacteria here. This, what you see here, you might be thinking, oh, viruses are much smaller than bacteria. That's not even the size of most viruses. That's actually the biggest virus that we know of that exists, and that's the Ebola virus. So if we get in a little closer, here's the size of the Ebola virus compared to normal sized bacteria. Right here, this is what the size of most viruses. So we zoom in even closer, and there you go. Okay, for me, it's more powerful actually going the other direction. So there's a virus, the size of most viruses. There's a normal sized virus compared to the biggest virus, which is Ebola. We pull out even more. There's viruses. Look, you can barely even see them compared to the bacteria here. Pull out more. Here's the viruses compared to our cells compared to bacteria cells. And then you pull all the way back out. All of that on the head of a single nail there. So, in looking at viruses, already we have some really important key points. They're not alive. They only have two parts to them. Extremely simple. Protein and DNA or RNA. Now, when you take a closer look, there's all sorts of different types of viruses out there. So here we have a cylindrical shaped virus. These are called helical viruses. This is an isohedral type virus. These viruses, their protein coats, their capsids, have triangle sides. So each surface of the capsid is in a triangle shape. Here you have your spherical, which they're not as interesting as the other shapes that we see here, but spherical viruses. And then you have this is a bacteriophage. This one looks like it's some sort of alien being here, some sort of life from another planet. So it has many different parts. It has like a helical part to it, isohedral part, and then these tail fibers and stuff that they have a part of it. So viruses have these really unique shapes and, to them, geometric shapes to them, but they are not alive. It's just really, really weird. Okay, so one other thing I want to bring up before we finish up this video is here, if we look at this little kid version drawing of a virus that I did, they have the protein coat, the DNA or RNA on the inside. Remember, these here, the protein receptors, are extremely important. They are key to a virus's success. And we're going to see why they're key to a virus's success in just a sec. Okay? But some viruses, again, not being alive, they do a lot of things that make them seem like they're alive. One thing that some viruses do is when they're coming out of their host cell, they will actually grab a piece of their host cell's membrane and wrap it around them. And when they wrap that around them, it's kind of like a disguise. It makes it harder for the host cell's immune system to actually recognize the virus. So another weird, interesting thing that viruses do that you wouldn't expect from something that is not considered alive. Okay. So why is a virus considered non-living? Here are the 4 big reasons. 1, it's not made out of cells. All life on our planet is either single-celled, like bacteria, or multicellular, like plants and animals, and they're made out of cells. There's a cell membrane, there's DNA, RNA, there's DNA for the main genetic material on the inside. There's ribosomes. Viruses don't have that. When you look at a virus, remember, think of kind of like a walnut. If you imagine a virus like a walnut, the protein coat, the capsid on the outside, that outer shell is like the shell of the walnut itself, and then the nut on the inside is like the DNA or RNA. Okay? So very, very simple. There is no cells there. So we're not calling this a cell because it's not a cell. There's no double membrane bilayer. That's not there at all. Okay? There's no growth. Once a virus has been put together, once it's been assembled, it doesn't grow. It doesn't get any bigger. It stays to its original specs. No energy required. Viruses don't have to eat. So if there was a virus sitting on a table and the environmental conditions were perfect, didn't get too hot, didn't get too cold, not too humid, not too dry, perfect environmental conditions, that virus could hypothetically live there forever or exist there forever. We can't even use the word live, right? So it can exist there forever because it doesn't require any energy. It doesn't have to eat to get energy to stay alive. Okay? So viruses don't require any energy either. And then finally, this is a big one here, a virus cannot reproduce on its own. Viruses need to infect host cells in order to reproduce. So they have to have a living thing. They have to have a cell, whether it's a bacteria or some other cell from a multicellular organism. They need a cell in order to survive. So viruses cannot reproduce on their own. So if you have a single virus sitting there, it'll always be a single virus. It cannot go through binary fission, grow bigger, make a copy DNA, split in 2. It doesn't do that. If you had a male and female viruses, which there are not, they can't get together and make more viruses that way. A virus cannot reproduce on its own. And the biggest reason for that, it doesn't have any ribosomes. If it doesn't have any ribosomes, how is it going to make more protein? How is it going to make more DNA, RNA? So what exactly do they do? Do viruses have some noble cause, some noble job that it does like bacteria? Do they decompose and make life possible on this planet? The answer is no. So viruses do not have some noble purpose. Viruses, all they do is infect cells to make more viruses. That seems to be the only purpose of viruses. Infect cells, make more viruses. That's it. Okay. So viruses are very specific. This is another big idea that's really important to understand about viruses too. So viruses are extremely specific as to what types of cells that they can infect. There are viruses that can only infect plant cells. And even within the whole plant group here, there are viruses that can only infect certain types of roses. There are viruses that can only infect certain types of palm trees. And that virus usually can't cross into different species. Okay? So viruses are very specific as to which types of cells that they can infect. There are viruses that can only infect bacteria. So these viruses that can only infect bacteria, if they were to get into a plant, it can't infect those plant cells. If those viruses were to get inside your body, they would not be able to infect your cells. They could infect the bacteria that lives in your gut, so the bacteria that you have that symbiotic relationship with, they could become infected by these types of bacteria, these types of viruses, but your personal cells cannot. And then there are viruses that can only infect animal cells. A really good example of this is feline HIV. So there's a virus that causes AIDS in cats. If your cat bites or scratches you and transfers the virus into your body, nothing's going to happen. That virus is specific to cat cells. If it gets in your body, it does not have what it takes to infect your human cells. Okay? So big idea here. Viruses are extremely specific as to what types of cells and what types of organisms that they can actually infect. Okay? Even within the organism itself that the virus can actually infect, the virus can only infect certain types of cells within the organism. Okay, so let's go ahead and take this example here. Again, here's one of my little kid drawings that I did here to show you what the shapes of viruses, why they are so important here. So here we have an influenza virus. This influenza virus here, we have the capsid. We don't see the DNA or RNA here, but we see the protein receptors. These act like keys. Remember I said earlier, these are key to a virus's success. The protein receptors act like keys that allow it to get into certain types of cells. So if we look at these cells here, we have a heart cell, nasal cell, liver cell, lung cell. Take a look and see which cells can this influenza virus infect. All right, you should be thinking the nasal cell and the lung cell. Okay? The shape of the protein receptors here don't match these U-shaped ones of the heart cell. It cannot infect that heart cell within your body. It can match with the nasal cell, and you might be thinking, wait, but it doesn't match these. It doesn't matter. All you need is one key to get inside of this cell here. So these match. The liver cell, same thing, they don't match. And then we look at the protein receptors on the surface of this lung cell, they match here, so then this influenza virus can infect those. Okay? So big idea. Viruses are specific as to what types of organisms they can infect, and also which types of cells, once they get into an organism, that they can actually infect.